Welcome back to math class. I hope you guys are doing okay at home. Please let us know if you have any questions. You can send me or Miss Ballard a message through Google Classroom, but please let us know if you're having trouble on one of the homework problems or you don't understand something, because through these videos, we're trying to keep you caught up. So when you come back, you don't feel behind and you're with everybody else. Okay, today we're going to be in lesson 5. So in your blue Learn workbook, find lesson 5 problem set. Also, get back out your place value chart, because like I said, we use that so much. It's very helpful as we get used to and comfortable with using it. Okay. All right. So today what we're going to do in this lesson is it is a review. You've done these things before, but we're going to relate how you say a number with how you write that number in standard form, and also how we write it in expanded form. So that's what we're working on today. This first example, it says express as decimal numerals. The first one is done for you. So notice in word form it says 4 thousandths. Okay, this word tells us where the number ends. It ends in the thousandths place. That THS is important because it tells us that's in the decimal part of our number. If we look at the place value chart, notice the thousandths is down here after the decimal, that THS, thousandths, hundredths, tenths. Okay, so it tells us we're down here. The number ends in the thousandths place, which means I have a 4 in the thousandths. Here's my decimal point, so these blanks have to be filled in with zeros. And that's why they have the answer in standard form like this. Okay, so let's look at the next one. This one says 24 thousandths. Okay, so if I look at the place value chart, my number still has to end in the thousandths place. But it said 24. So to make it say 24, I do that. Still ends in the thousandths place. So on my answer, I put 24 thousandths. Okay, now let's look at the next one. This says 1 and something. Okay, Miss DP, I know in 4th grade really emphasized this. When you see the word and in a number, that is the decimal point. It's the dividing point in my number. Anything over here is the whole number, and anything over here is the decimal or fraction part of the number. Okay, so 1 and means 1 decimal point. Okay, if I looked at my place value chart, it would be 1 is my whole number, and now let's look at the next part. 324 thousandths. Okay, so it has to end in that thousandths place. It has to end right here. So if it's 324, notice I have 3 slots, 324, and it ends in the thousandths place. Okay, so that would be my number in standard form. 1 and 324 thousandths. Okay, let's look at the next one. This one says 608 thousandths. Notice I don't see the word and, so that means I don't have a whole number out front. Okay, it just says 608 thousandths. Okay, so over here, I'm going to think to myself, okay, it was tenths, hundredths, thousandths. It should end here, 608. Well, if I wrote the number 608, that would be 3 spots, right? 608 thousandths, ends in the thousandths place. Now, these two look a lot the same, but let's see how they're different. 608 thousandths. Okay, so again, this is the whole number, 600. Then I put and as my decimal. And then this says 8 thousandths. Okay, so again, I like to do these slots to help me remember. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. It's got to end here. So if it says 8 thousandths, my number has to end The 8 has to be in the thousandths place, which means I fill in these gaps with zeros. Okay, now if you look at the next one, now they stopped giving it to us in word form, and now it's written as a fraction. But how would I say this? 46 thousandths. 46 over 1,000, or 46 thousandths. So again, on my place value chart, there is no whole number, and it has to end in the thousandths place. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So if it's 46, it has to end right here. So that means I fill in my gap with a 0. Okay, next one. Notice I have a whole number in this one. 3 is my whole number. So it goes to the left of the decimal, 3 and 946 thousandths. So again, I have to have 3 places, and the 946 fills those 3 slots to end in the thousandths place. And the last one in our chart, the whole number is 200. So it goes before the decimal, 200 and 904 thousandths. So again, I have to have 3 places after the decimal, and I'll fill in 904. All right, now we're going to move on to number 2. And in number 2, it says express each of the following values in words. So now we're going to write word form, which would be how we say the number. So if I look at this first one, there is no whole number, so I don't typically say 0 and something. I just ignore that 0. So I look down here, and all I see is a 5, and it ends in the thousandths place. So I write 5, and I write the place that it ends, which is the thousandths. And it's very important to put that THS, 5 thousandths, which tells me I'm in the decimal part of the number. Okay, now look at this one. This one has a whole number. So I read the whole number first to the left of the decimal, okay, and then I move to the right of the decimal. So one piece at a time. So before the decimal, the whole number is 11. Then remember, when I get to that decimal point, I put the word and, 11 and. Now I'm going to cover up the whole number. How would you say this number? You'd say 37. So I put 37. And then I have to end with the place that the decimal ends in. Remember, this is tenths, hundredths, thousandths. It ends in the thousandths place. So I have to write that at the end of my number. Okay, and the last one. I'm going to say the whole number first, 403. So 403. Then I get to the decimal point, so I put the word and. Okay, 403 and. Now I read the last part of this number. Well, how would you say that? You would say 608. Okay, so just say it how you would, or write it how you'd say that, 608, and then you have to put the place that the number ends in. Again, it's the thousandths place, so I have to put 608 thousandths. Okay, so that's practicing our word form. Now, the last part of our lesson today is working on expanded form. So notice the directions. It says write the number on a place value chart. And notice here's the number, and they've done this one for us. So they've drawn a place value chart. Then write it in expanded form using fractions or decimals to express the decimal place value units. The first one is done for you. Okay, so remember, expanded form is you're pulling apart the number and you're telling the value of every digit in the number. So this one has 5 pieces to it. Now it says using fractions or decimals. So we're going to talk about that down here in a minute, but you did this last year in 4th grade. So this should be a review. So let's see if we can jog that memory. Okay, the first thing you do is take the 3 is in the tens place. Okay, so it's like I'm giving little clues for every number. Okay, 3 is in the tens, so I write 3 times 10, which is 30. Okay, then I have a 5 in the ones place, so I say 5 times 1. Then I have an 8 in the tenths place, so I'm going to write 8 times a tenth. Notice they put parentheses. You don't have to do that. I know sometimes that throws kids off. You don't have to put the parentheses. Okay, 8 times a tenth. Then I have a 2 in the hundredths place, so that's 2 times a hundredth. And then I have 7 in the thousandths place, so that's 7 times a thousandth. Now that was writing those decimal places as fractions, but here, this is writing them as decimals. Okay, so notice the 3 in the tens and the 5 in the ones is the same, but if I'm gonna write these place values as decimals, I'd have an 8 in the tenths place. So that's how I would write a tenth as a decimal. The 2 in the hundredths place, that's a hundredth as a decimal. And a 7 in the thousandths place, it's a thousandth as a decimal. Okay, so they wrote it both ways for you to see, and I will do that in this video, but it does say or, so you can pick which way you like the best. Okay, so let's look at the back, or the next page. Okay, the first thing it told us to do was to put it in a place value chart. So we're gonna do that really quickly. And you can use your place value chart that you have at home if you want, or I can quickly just draw me a little place value chart. And this is the ones place, this is the tenths, and the hundredths, and the thousandths place. Okay, so let's start our expanded form. I'm going to take it a digit at a time. Okay, I have a 2 in the tenths place, so that's 2 times a tenth. Okay, then I have a 4 in the hundredths place, so that's 4 times a hundredth. And I have a 9 in the thousandths place, so that's 9 times a thousandth. And notice I put plus signs between them, because if you smush the number together, you would add those together to get this number. Okay, notice I didn't put parentheses. You can if you want, but you don't have to. Okay, so that's in fraction form. In decimal form, it would just be, I would write the tenth as a decimal. Okay, 4 times a hundredth, I would write 100th as a decimal. And 9 times a thousandth, I would write the thousandth as a decimal. Okay, so let's try this next one. The next one, notice, has a whole number. This one didn't. Okay, so if I put this in a place value chart really quickly, kind of write it bigger and space it out a little bit. And I'm going to label my places. This is the tens place and the ones place, the tenths and the hundredths and the thousandths. We're going to get really good at that place value chart, hopefully. Okay, so expanded form of my number. I start with each digit, okay? So I have a 5 first. I have a 5 in the tens place, so it's 5 times 10. Move my finger over. I have a 7 in the ones place, so that's 7 times 1. Again, it's like little clues or directions telling where each digit is found. Okay, then I move down. I have a 2 in the tenths place. That's 2 times a tenth. Or I could write, I'm just going to write it below, or 2 times a tenth. Either way. Then I have an 8 in the hundredths place, 8 times a hundredth, or 8 times a hundredth. And finally, we have a 1 in the thousandths place, so it's 1 times a thousandth, like that. Or I'm going to run off my paper, 1 times a thousandth. Okay, the beginning part of the number would stay the same, 5 in the tens place and 7 in the ones place. Okay, but again, this is the way to write it as a fraction, 2 in the tenths, 8 in the hundredths place, 1 in the thousandths place. Okay, now number 4, now they're giving us expanded form, and you have to write it as a decimal in standard form. Write a decimal for each of the following. Use a place value chart to help if necessary. So if it helps you, you can use this place value chart that we have. Okay, maybe I'll do one like that. So let's see this first one. Notice it says we have a 7 in the tens place. Okay, so I'm going to put that on my place value chart. A 7 in the tens place. I'm going to follow my directions. A 4 in the ones place. So I put a 4 in the ones. I have a 6 in the tenths place. I have a 9 in the hundredths place. And I have a 2 in the thousandths place. Now notice they gave us those little directions in order, which makes it kind of easy. But don't get tricked. Sometimes they'll mix them up. You have to follow the little directions, or you might not have a number in one of the places and it would skip it. So you do have to pay attention and not just look at the numbers and say, 74.692. It won't always work that nicely, but in this case it does. Okay, so if I was going, this would be my answer to write on my paper. 74 and 692 thousandths. Okay, well, say that I don't have my place value chart with me, or I want to try one without it. Let's try. I'm going to look at this number at first and notice here's my whole numbers, and now I see decimals over here. So that's the after the decimal point. So let's just focus on these two. I have a 5 in the hundreds place. So I'm going to kind of put little blanks over here. If I have the hundreds place, it would be here's my ones, here's my tens, here's my hundreds. 5 in the hundreds place goes right here. And I have a 3 in the tens place, which would go right here. Okay? Notice then it jumps to after the decimal. So I don't have a number in the ones, so I put a 0 there. So 530 is my whole number. Now this says I have an 8 in the tenths place, which is right here. And I have a 9 in the thousandths place. This is tenths, hundredths, thousandths. The 9 goes in the thousandths place. So that means there's nothing here. Okay, and there's my number. Okay, the last one. I see I have a 4 in the thousands. Okay, so again, I'm going to draw my little blanks. If I have thousands in my number, there I go is my thousands, and I'm just going to put tenths, hundredths, thousandths over here. So that's like I'm making a little place value chart for myself. I have a 4 in the thousands, and a 2 in the hundreds, and a 7 in the ones place. So I'm being careful. There wasn't anything in the tens, so I'll put a 0. Now it says I have a 3 in the hundredths place and a 4 in the thousandths place. Nothing was in the tenths, so I fill in with a 0. And there's my number. 4,207 and 34 hundredths. Okay, very last one. Mr. Pham wrote 2.619 on the board. Christy says it is 2 and 619 thousandths. Amy says it's 2 ones, 6 tenths, 100th, 9 thousandths. Who is right? Use words and numbers to explain your answer. Well, let's look at Christy. I'm going to put my finger under the number. She says it is 2 and 619 thousandths. Well, I agree with her. That's how you'd say that number. So Christy is right. So let's look at Amy. Amy says it's 2 ones, 2 in the ones, 6 tenths, I have 6 in the tenths, 100th, I have 1 in the hundredths, 9 thousandths, there's 9 in the thousandths. So she's right also. Well, who's right? Both are right, actually. Amy said her number, or Christy said her number in standard form. Christy gave standard form. And Amy gave, Amy's is written in unit form. That isn't how we would say the number. We don't say 2 1/16, 100th, 9 thousandths. That's not how you say it, but that is called unit form. You're telling what digit is in each of those unit place values. Okay, so Amy gave unit form, but they are both actually correct. Okay, I hope that you followed this lesson okay. Please give the lesson 5 homework a try. Again, this was a review, so hopefully you feel pretty comfortable with this. And we'll see you next time. Good luck on your homework, and let us know if you have any questions.